me go to here, see if we're going. Hopefully so. And my channel. And then, of course, I'll just share it on a social media or two, and then...
Yeah, I just wrote hello talk just in case. But
there's that. Still doesn't appear to be up. Sometimes it takes a minute for it to come through. There we go. All right, I think it's good now. Let me mute that, and then... All right, cool. So I think we are good. I'm going to post this on Twitter real quick, and then we will just kind of get started chatting and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, man, sounds good.
Come join the conversation. Fun time, boom. Every time I spell languages, I spell it Langauges. Like, I don't know, like it's like a weird muscle memory misspelling when I type.
Yeah, I know this. There are words like that. I can't remember which ones I do like that. Oh, it does happen.
All right, so there we go. It is shared on Twitter, sharing it on Facebook now, and then I'll make an Instagram post. But everybody who is joining, if anybody is joining, I don't know if anybody's joining yet, and that is fine. But basically, we are going to be doing, or I'm going to be doing a podcast series. I did a series a long time ago called Langcast, which is exactly what it sounds like, a language podcast. And I thought I really wanted to do that, especially with everybody being quarantined pretty much all around the world. And I thought just a little bit of additional content versus just the standard me struggling learning whatever language is the hot subject at the time for me at the time. And so I really wanted to do that. And then I decided that to make it a little bit cooler, I thought it would be cool to do a video of doing it live. That way, if people wanted to interact, it could be more than just me or someone talking. If you have an interest, if you're watching this, I don't care if you have a YouTube channel. I don't care if you have social media. I don't care what you have. I don't care about a following. I don't care anything. If you love languages, I will talk to you. And I don't mind to talk to you because I love chatting languages. This isn't about getting my channel found or anything of that nature. I could give a crap less. I just want to talk languages and have fun. So that is what we are doing. Today I am with James, who he's always in my live chat. Every time I go live, he'll always pop in and say what's up. So it's really, really cool to put a face to a name. Do you want to do any kind of introduction or anything? Just a little bit of brief who you are. Introduce yourself to the people.
Yeah, for sure. So hi to anyone in the chat. My name is James. I'm from Ottawa, Canada. I've been into languages since probably since around the end of high school. I speak around 5 or 6 of them: German, Spanish, French, Italian, Polish, and I'm probably forgetting one. But yeah, no, I'm totally into it. I noticed that Seabolt and me and Seabolt, we use a lot of the same resources for language learning, and so I'm sure we'll find a lot of interesting topics to speak about.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's cool. So you speak 5 languages, and you said that. So in terms of that, what would you say that your strongest one is?
So yeah, the top. Well, the next one will probably be German. It's I learned it because I lived in Germany for quite a long time, around 5 years.
Oh, okay.
After that, Spanish and French are probably above conversational. The ones that there are a number of other languages that I just kind of dabble in just out of curiosity. But the top 5 or 6, I'm pretty conversational in. But yeah, probably English, English, Spanish, German, and French are probably the strongest ones.
Okay, that sounds pretty cool. Those are basically just about all languages that I've dabbled in. That's cool. What just out of curiosity, what took you to Germany to live there?
Yeah, man. It was just after high school, pretty much. I just started university right away, and I was taking maths and kind of just wanted a bit of a break from things. So I did a trip. I did a trip to Berlin and stayed there for about a month. But really, just kind of one thing led to another. It was never really planned that I stay that long. But you just kind of, you find your job, you get your apartment, you kind of get tied down, and eventually, yeah, it ended up being around five years before I finally came back to Canada, and I've been back there for around 2 years now.
Whoa, that's crazy. That's super good. So you stayed there for 5 years. So you're what,
Yeah.
20,
20,
20,
26.
26? Okay, cool. So I'm 32. So
Okay.
you have a lot more experience in terms of languages and stuff at a younger age. So that's definitely cool. So in Germany, when you were in Germany, and before you came back, you didn't start learning until did you start learning German once you went there, or did you preemptively know you were going and started learning before?
It was really random, honestly. It was just I didn't really know very much about Europe at all when I went, and I just thought Berlin was sort of the first thing to come into my mind. And it was really just the only connection I kind of had to German and to the German language was sort of music, like with Rammstein and like this kind of stuff. It was really superficial,
Gotcha.
but I didn't know a bit. I didn't really know how to learn languages back then. So kind of what I did before I left was things like Rosetta Stone. Back then there
Sure.
was Live Polka, and I
Hmm.
don't know if Lingo was around, but there was that kind of stuff. Really superficial. When I got there, I could pretty much not. I was really surprised with how little I knew actually, because when I went, I was feeling quite confident, and then no.
Yeah, that seems like how it is. Like you always have this kind of like almost like a false sense of security because you learn, but it's also hard to until you learn your first language. It's hard to understand that what you're learning is superficial book
Yeah.
conversations and conversation. Even I think about people learning English. If they heard this conversation right here, it's so out of the normal from a normal conversation that like it kind of sets you up for it gets you there. You get vocabulary, but people speak way differently than how you learn they speak.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that really ties into, for example, a lot of the popular language software even. I remember you mentioning you're using Babbel before, I believe, to learn some
Hmm.
language. What
Yep.
I do like about it actually is the dialogue simulators at the end, but it kind of gets you into, just as you mentioned, sort of this phase of like false expectations. Like now you feel comfortable. You're like, oh, okay, I can handle this kind of conversation. I
Yeah.
can order a ticket from the train, but really you can't. Like,
Yeah. It,
but
it, it makes it hard, and like one of the things that I struggle with when it comes to that is there are so many different ways to say the same sentence.
yeah.
So I mean, really and truly, there's only so much that a book or Duolingo, Lingodeer, Link, any of these programs that you're using can train you for because there are so many ways that you can say the same sentence.
You're right, yeah. Which is why for me it doesn't really matter too much what you do at the start, whatever really floats your boat. But to get into native content as soon as possible for me is has a really big importance in language learning. Just so you can actually just hear what it
Yeah.
actually sounds like.
Right. No, absolutely. I 100% agree. And I know that one of the things, because that's a thing. Like for anybody watching, I don't know. Like me and James aren't somebody who have spoke regularly, so this is all just kind of on the fly, which is part of what I really wanted on this. Um, in the idea of this is just natural, like because I feel like if it's someone that you know really really well, you can kind of pad a conversation however you want. I love just genuine, true, natural. First time we've ever spoke. But one of the things that I asked you about was anything that you want to, or talk about or whatever, and you did say that you loved Link, and I know you had just mentioned about getting getting native content. So in terms of like as of right now, I you may have said just a second ago when I was posting on social media, did you say what is your active study language right now?
This year, essentially for the entire year, my main focus will be Polish, and
Okay.
I am I'm choosing a second kind of dabble language. I'm messing with
Hmm.
Guarani and
Hmm.
Basque mostly, and
Okay.
Catalan. And of those three, I'll probably pick one just to do more or less passively. But most of my time is going into Polish this year.
Polish. Okay. So are you using Link for Polish?
I'm using Link for Polish, yeah.
Okay.
And there's a great site called realpolish.pl, and it's just a source of native content. Well, he's a native, but he makes podcasts, for example, for Polish learners. It's amazing stuff, and you import that into Link and just sort of work with it. And then, for example, use italki to put it all to use.
Okay, cool. That's cool. Yeah, it's when I dabbled in Russian for a little bit, I used it's three ears three ears dot some sort of extension .com dot whatever it is,
Okay.
and they had videos and they were all it was Link importer friendly. As a matter of fact, I had tweeted about it, and I think it was either Eric from Link. It may have been Steve, but one of them had tweeted and said, "Check this website out, and everything that you import, the audio, like I've never had issues. That's one of the sites that I've never had issues with pulling in where it'll pull the transcript and the audio.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sometimes, when I would try to import a Japanese anime or even Japanese YouTube videos or Chinese stuff with Mandarin or anything, like a lot of times, I feel like sometimes it would pull the transcript. Most of the time, the transcript was fine as long as you had it selected, and then the other thing was it would sometimes pull the audio and sometimes it wouldn't. But I never had a problem with 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it depends, and even I think you're experiencing the same thing right now, learning Greek and Korean, I believe, at the same time. That
Mm-hmm.
it also is really sort of it's a different experience depending on the language you're learning, right? So I mean, for me, doing something like Polish or if you're doing French or these kinds of Latin-based languages, it's quite a different thing trying to mess with things like Korean and Chinese. I would imagine. Personally, I've not dabbled too much in Asian languages, but definitely it's a lot more challenging.
Yeah, I don't know why, man. That's always been my number one thing. Is I love Asian language, specifically Eastern Asian languages, Chinese,
Yeah.
Japanese, and stuff. And then later on in life, I got into Korean, and I really, really want to learn at some point Vietnamese. Vietnamese people are some of the friendliest people that I've ever encountered. As soon as you tell one Vietnamese person that you're even thinking about learning Vietnamese, they will never stop messaging you ever. Like they want to help. Like it's such a because you run into a problem, right? Like which I'm assuming in Canada it's probably the same for French as it is for Spanish here. If I want to practice Spanish and I go to a place, if I go to the local Mexican restaurant and I start speaking Spanish, no one really cares because it's almost expected. Well, we're in America, you should know Spanish. And I presume in Canada, it's probably not as adamant about that, but I'm sure that it's kind of the similar way, especially the closer you get to Montreal with French.
Right.
But then you've got people who, a language such as Vietnamese, that's maybe not a high profile language or, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, a highly sought after language, and so they're just like, you want to learn my language? Yes, I want to help you. Let's talk all the time. So I don't know, that's just what I found in terms of that, but that got on a sidetrack there with the Vietnamese, but Vietnamese is a language I definitely want to learn in terms of that, and then maybe dabble. I know I don't know if you follow Phing Tam languages on YouTube or on social media. It's a dude named Aaron. He teaches English in Thailand. And just seeing his kind of experience has made me think like, oh man, maybe Thai would be pretty cool down the road. So I'm always the easiest.
That's dangerous behavior. That's dangerous behavior. It's just too much. There's way too many nice languages out there. It's a problem with me too. It's really hard to stay focused, honestly. I do the same thing.
It is.
Bouncing back.
It is, man, and that's why I'd made that video speaking about how I wanted to kind of my goals in languages have changed, and it's much less about I want to learn Japanese because I want to watch Battle Royale, or you know what I mean? Like it's become more about, okay, within 30 minutes I have a Korean restaurant and a Greek restaurant. Those are two languages that aren't as crazy as, say, or not as crazy, but it would be way more accepted versus going to a Spanish restaurant or a Mexican restaurant and speaking Spanish. And so that's where that's where it's kind of changed. And branching into that, your goals, like when you're deciding what is kind of the factor in what you're deciding, like why are you learning that language or anything like that. Also, while you're talking, I just realized I think I'm gonna go change the title of this video to where it's because it's not really an interview. We're just chatting.
No, we're just chatting.
So. Go ahead. But yeah, so what is your process when you're deciding on a language? Like right now, when you're all right, I'm learning Polish. Like what's your process through that?
Yeah, well, Polish is the really concrete reason that my girlfriend's from Poland.
That would be a good reason.
So that's definitely the reason there. Aside from that, though, I pretty much just see where things kind of take me. Like for example, with Spanish, I really like to really dive into the cultural sort of nitty-gritty stuff, and learning about Paraguay and the situation with their sort of bilingualism with Guarani and Jopara, and the many languages of Spain with Basque and Catalan, all this kind of stuff. You kind of dabble, and you necessarily just kind of get really curious, and then whatever sticks. Like if something sticks with me, I'll kind of go with it. But it is sort of hard to stick with one,
Sure.
Unless it's a necessary thing, right? So for me, it's really easy to stick with Polish, but it would be really hard for me to sort of stick with a language like Basque or Catalan. It's hard to find that sort of
sure. Yeah.
perseverance.
And that makes sense. And I think that's one of the best reasons to learn something, man. My buddy Kyle, that I met via learning Esperanto when I learned Esperanto. He's from. I'm from. So I'll just give you a little bit of a backstory on that. I'm from Virginia, but I'm right on the line of West Virginia, and really and truly, the area is more West Virginia than Virginia. It's a weird thing, but I met him, and when I was looking for Esperanto speakers, I was like, surely there's not any, because like when you search Virginia, it's always like anywhere that would be in Virginia that people are doing that is usually 2 or 3 hours away. Mm-hmm. And so I was like, well, let me look in West Virginia, because West Virginia is, there's a lot of stuff happening close. Even Charleston, which I know that you're from Canada, so I don't know if this is probably just words to you, but like
a bit over my head, but yeah.
but like Charleston, West Virginia is like even it's like an hour and 15, hour and a half away, so it's not too bad. And so I looked on. There's an app called Amikimu. I can't remember. It's done by actually a dude who speaks Esperanto. But anyway, I searched and there was a guy from Beckley, which is about 40 minutes from me. And anyway, so there's the backstory on that. But anyway, so I met this guy who became friends, but he just recently moved to Pennsylvania and started dating a Vietnamese chick. And he started learning Vietnamese for that. And of course, he's seen progress and he's doing really, really well. Or last time I talked to him, he was doing really, really well. And it's because of having that motivation. His, as far as I know, and I'm gonna ask you about this too. So like her family doesn't really speak a lot of English. It's primarily Vietnamese. Like, does your girlfriend's family speak predominantly Polish? Like, or do they speak a lot of English?
So she moved here actually. She moved to Canada from Poland around 3 years ago, and her English now is completely fluent. She moved here with her mom, who can get by in day-to-day things, but. In terms of any sort of conversational fluency, it's not just there yet. But yeah. So that what I mean to say is a lot of her family is still in Poland, and so their level of English is not as high as they would be as if they would have come to Canada too. So,
gotcha.
But in general, it's sort of that just sort of existing next to the language, it's sort of necessarily, and just even hearing her speak on the phone in Polish, or like she's exposing herself to Polish media and all this kind of stuff, and you just sort of it being there and reminding you, like, hey, you don't understand this yet, you don't understand this yet. Like, you still gotta. It kind of keeps pushing you, because in a lot of other cases in languages, you're kind of like, there's so many stops along the way where there's barriers and plateaus, and it's a lot easier to just be like, oh, there's a new shiny toy over here. Let me just. It looks so much better.
Dude, I'm the king of shiny new toys when it comes to languages, man.
But no, yeah. With that, I think there is certainly a bit of truth there. I think the saying is like you either learn a language in the crib or in the bed. a bit of truth.
Hey, I mean, whatever keeps you motivated, which is part of why I changed my goals. That's motivation. So, and it's funny, talking about the media, that's another thing that makes you. Because as much as it'll say, okay, I need to study this, the moment you hear a word or even a phrase that you recognize is the greatest feeling in the world.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll never forget going through. I'm in a bunch of Esperanto groups, which I haven't spoke Esperanto in over 2 years, so that's probably would be insanely butchered if I even tried. But I was going through Esperanto, and I was reading a post, and it was in Esperanto, but I didn't even think about it. I was just reading the post, and I kept scrolling down, and then I said, well, hold on just a second. And I scrolled back up, and I realized the entire post was in Esperanto, and I didn't have to think about it. I didn't have to translate it in my head. I just knew what it meant. Like, there was, and that was the coolest feeling ever.
Yeah, no, I can totally imagine. And for the languages that you're currently working on, your Greek and your Korean primarily, what are you also working with? Like, are you watching Korean? I'm not really familiar what there is, but apparently Korean media is very popular.
Sure. Right now, I've not really done. Oh, hold on, let me see. I am gonna just try to read the comments just occasionally too. Yeah. Nick says having a partner who speaks different languages is really great motivation. My significant other is Taiwanese Canadian, and so it motivates me to learn Mandarin and Taiwanese. That's super awesome. Yeah, I mean that's one of the best things for sure, in my opinion. In terms of media, the only thing I will occasionally use Duolingo for Greek. Mm-hmm. I haven't really. I started making videos for Link's YouTube channel, which is super awesome. I approached Eric from Link about it, and I was like, hey man, I know that you guys do a French, and I know that you guys do a Japanese video, like once a week of people using Link to learn. I said, I'm learning Greek. Like, why don't you let me do that? Because Greek, like, I think it would be cool. And again, I know that we had messaged in Instagram earlier, you talking about languages that didn't have as much kind of stuff behind it, or even, you know, the way that I interpreted what you were saying was even like resources, like it was very low, you know, stuff. And I was, and basically the way I approached Eric was like, hey, let me do videos for Link. Like, I don't get paid for it or anything, but I love it's one of my favorite platforms. I literally mention it all the freaking time. And I was like, why not let me make videos for you guys with Greek? Because that's huge for you guys, because Greek is not something that has as many resources and stuff. And so literally for Greek, I just about use that. And I've mentioned it in my Link videos occasionally. Like I've done 3 videos for him so far. And I've made mention, like, you know, if you guys know any content, because like that is one thing I do struggle with. I don't know any content. I don't know any podcast. I don't know. We got somebody. So Overseer says hi from Serbia. Hey, what's going on? Welcome. I don't know any kind of media from Greek. I don't know music or anything. On the flip side, in Korean, I talked with, you know, Lindy Boitez is. She told me how to pronounce. She told me how to pronounce her name, and I've already butchered it. And I apologize if Lindy watches this, but I sent her a message because I know she speaks Korean, and I was like, hey, music recommendations. So she sent me her. She sent me 3 playlists on Spotify for Korean, which is super, super good. And then my favorite movie of all time is Korean, and it's Old Boy. I don't know if you've seen that or not, or heard of it.
I think I might have. What's the it's a thriller?
Yes, yeah.
I must have seen it. I went through this phase where I was like totally just every Korean thriller I just couldn't stop it. I think I watched all of them in a week.
Yeah, it's my favorite movie ever, and it's got a super sick twisted ending and all this stuff. But it's like the ultimate revenge tale. Yeah, because the guy's locked up and he gets out and he wants to go. Which Greek, ancient or modern? I'm learning modern Greek. So he's in this, you know, place where he's been locked up, and he's locked up for like a very, very long time, and he gets out and he goes to kill basically the guy that locked him up, and then there's just a whole bunch of stuff like that. So it's because if I get into it, it kind of starts deteriorating the plot. Like, it's just you kind of got to watch it. So
you gotta watch it. No, but these are wow. Even the Korean thrillers and thrillers from Spain. All of those are really quite breathtaking. It's definitely something.
If you you can send me some recommendations after this for the Spanish, because I definitely would be interested in watching it. Let's see. Remember when you said you and your wife were going to go to Italy? I do remember that, and that is probably not going to happen right now. It is about vengeance. Yeah, vengeance. Vengeance is probably a better word than revenge. It's literally in a series called the Vengeance series. So, but that in terms of media, that's about it. I don't. I'm not watching any kind of like anything other than that, really. And I think part of it is I'm just trying to get down a little bit of vocabulary first before I jump in, because I do, and if you want to expand on this, you can. A lot of times, if I don't have at least some sort of base, and I'm not talking a huge base, but even like, let's say 100 words under my belt, it becomes so overwhelming not ever even being able to pick out if somebody's saying I do something or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I can completely agree. I think watching movies has some value in language learning, but I think the value tends to be a little bit overrated, because you gotta kind of, what's really important, I think, at the beginning especially, and even into the intermediate levels, is having content that's at such a length that you can repeat it over and over and over again. And there's just simply not enough time, and there's simply not enough time to just keep rewatching the same movies in practice. And it can be rewarding when you're already at sort of an intermediate level, and it can motivate you to be sort of exposed to the culture and the movie and all this kind of stuff. For me, it's quite a motivating factor. But you gotta time it right, because, for example, when I was messing a bit with Catalan, there's a Netflix series in Catalan, and I imported it into Link and was sort of working with it. But just how much effort it was taking me just to get through one scene was just more exhausting than fun. It was, you gotta time it right. But yeah, it can be a big contributor.
No, I can agree with that. It's definitely, I don't know, man. I mean, and I know everybody learns differently. But for me, I do like the idea of immersion, but I also think, I don't know. I don't know. I know people who have learned through immersion.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously the big story would be Matt versus Japan and some of those guys. And I do love the MIA format. I actually support Matt on Patreon. I think he does great stuff. But in terms of, I don't have 5 hours, even 5 hours a day to dedicate to listening, even if it's passive listening. Like, and I know that sounds like an excuse, but it really, really is. Hold on, let's see here. Would you ever make a video like Lao Shu? Yes, I've actually talked to him about that. I know a lot of people do that, but I didn't want to feel like I didn't want him to feel like I was piggybacking off of his idea, because I work for Moses, so he's by technicality my boss, and I didn't want him to think of that. The USA is the most dangerous place to be right now. That is true. But so in terms of resources, and this is a pretty common question for a lot of people, and that's, you've got two types of people in terms of study. There are people who say put the phone down, don't use apps, they're just supplements, and then you've got people who they don't do books, they just use applications. Do you have any kind of thought on that?
I mean, I think it's a good question. I do use Duolingo and things like that from time to time, but it always supplementally. I personally try to get into. Although there's a huge disclaimer here, is that, for example, the languages that I'm learning are quite different than the languages that you're learning, and that for you, Korean is something completely new, more or less. Greek is something completely new. But for me to jump from Spanish to Italian, I can already understand a large part. Like, if I just open a book, I could probably kind of figure my way through it.
Sure.
So for me, using Duolingo doesn't make that much sense for that, because there's not a whole lot of point to just try to nail down the basics when you can just already expose yourself to native content. Right. When I did actually, is I was messing with Russian for about maybe half a year, and I was actually really, really using Duolingo. Kind of learn how to type it on the keyboard. You need to. It takes a lot more drilling. So I mean, if I'm messing with a language that does require drilling, then I don't see any problem with applications. But I don't find, if I'm in a language where I already have sort of an edge with something like Italian, for example, I'll tend to skip it over as it's probably not entirely necessary.
Right. I can agree with that, because like, even though my Spanish isn't good by any means, I am by certificate a B1 Spanish speaker, but. I don't know how that would hold up right now. I have a bad habit of learning a lot and then letting it go dormant for a while. But when last year I was trying to, I'd really gotten just discouraged with languages, and I had picked up French for a little bit, because I was like, well, with me having a base in Spanish, I should be able to pick it up, and that'll at least be a confidence booster. And I did. I mean, I'd learned like almost 600 French words, like 600 French words in like 3 or 4 weeks. Like, I mean, just burning through, and it's because of how much vocabulary is so similar. So I definitely understand what you're saying in that regard. Have you ever used well, they don't have a Polish course, but did you ever use Lingo Deer? I can't remember if you said in the comments or not.
I know, I've been seeing you use it actually, and I've been quite interested in it. I honestly was thinking it's one that has Vietnamese, right?
They do have Vietnamese, yep.
Right. Yeah, because Vietnamese has also been kind of crossing my mind, because it's just that I have all of my language sets are pretty much all European languages, and I'm kind of like, it's really time to mix it up a little bit at this point. Right. So Vietnamese would be kind of cool. I was actually looking at starting it up. At the moment, I don't know if I'll be able to, but I haven't actually used it yet. But it looks really cool, because I think I've seen one of your live streams where you use it. It looks it definitely handles Asian languages better.
It for sure does. And that's the big thing. Like, and just to put a disclaimer out about that, like, I know that I trash Duolingo a lot. It's not that I'm trashing it as much as for the specific topic of what you're talking about, Duolingo's interface, its UI, is not designed to handle Asian languages. It's not. Especially a language like Japanese, where that's a good question. I'll get to that in just a second. That just came through. But in terms of Japanese, and honestly, not a lot of apps do Japanese well because of the kanji, from where they can have multiple readings. Because I've even noticed in Link, when a kanji, because I will read with furigana on, because I still don't know all the kanji. But when I read it, I'll even notice the furigana is what it correctly is supposed to be, but what is pronounced in, especially like the text to speech, is incorrect. So that's a very, very hard language to to do, and with Lingo Deer, with it being, I mean, really and truly, I know that people kind of crap on those systems, but it's nothing more than it's sentence mining with +1. It's +1 sentence mining. They teach you a phrase, I drink water. Okay, well, what comes next? I drink juice. Okay, well, what comes next? I drink milk. Okay, you know what I mean? And then and then they might introduce a new word, so I drink milk for breakfast. Okay, well, so instead of drink, why don't we change that word to eat and change milk to bread? I mean, it's just sentence mining is all it is.
There's nothing wrong with it. Like, I mean, for me, it's really, for me, it really doesn't matter what you're doing at the start of a language. Really, whatever floats your boat. It really, once you get to the intermediate level, like, I would really start to say, there starts to be more of sort of a best approach, so to speak. You know, exposing yourself to content and really just getting your conversation practice in there, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I would say is hands down probably the best way. But if from beginner to intermediate or even to high intermediate, I really don't think it matters. And if something like Duolingo or any of this kind of stuff is fun for you, I don't see any problem with it.
Yeah. I think, honestly, my approach on that is the best software to use is the one that you can stick with.
Totally. Yeah.
And that's coming from a giant hypocrite and someone who is basically a professional language dabbler in myself. But the one that you can stick with, that's the best one. So let's get to this question. This is a good one. How do you stay motivated?
Why don't you go first?
Me go first? Well, again, I'm not really a good person to ask because I've not really, Spanish is my strongest language, and I'm a B1, and that is probably pendant on the day that I'm speaking.
Okay, great.
But my motivation is, it just depends on at what point I am in my life as to what's going on. Like, I don't have a specific thing. I know when I was learning Japanese, one of my biggest goals was to be able to, I'm a massive, huge wrestling fan. Like I'll watch, I watch anything. I'll watch most of the stuff that's on TV, but I don't get, if there's 10 people in the audience and it's streaming somewhere online, I will watch it if it's good. Like there's an art form to it, man. And I'll fight people to the death on it. But anyway, so my goal in Japanese, my motivation was I wanted to watch some promotions from Japan, New Japan Pro Wrestling, some All Japan stuff, Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT, some of these promotions from Japan, and I wanted to be able to watch it and at least some sort of understand the context of what was happening via the commentary. And so that was kind of my motivation with Japanese. With Spanish, my motivation was simply I felt obligated as an American that I needed to learn Spanish. That's kind of where that came from. And then in terms of other languages, Esperanto, my motivation was that I needed to stick with something because I never had, and that was easy, and there was no excuse not to. And so that was kind of the motivation for that, which really worked. Esperanto is the only Duolingo tree I finished. I fully finished it. And that was also kind of my motivation is I was seeing that I could finish something, which it's updated now, but that's actually, I think that might be my most viewed video on my channel is me finishing the Duolingo Esperanto tree. But so that was my motivation for that. And then, again, as time changed, depending on what's going on in my life, my motivation now for Greek and Korean are, for Korean, I want to be able to go to a restaurant called Kalbi in Pembroke. What is that town called, Trey? Do you remember? What is that town where that Korean restaurant is? No, that's Greek. Is it Pembroke? Anyway, sorry, that was a useless side tangent there, but
for anyone taking notes, it was called.
but it's in Pembroke, which again that's completely useless information to anybody. But so there's a restaurant, and I want to be able to speak to them. And then my motivation in Greek is that again, there's a restaurant locally, and now even more so in Greek, my motivation is I've agreed to make these videos for Link. I can't not do that because then I could never approach them again about doing content for them because they'd be like, remember when you didn't do it the first time? So that's kind of my motivation. And honestly, that was part of the reason I reached out to Link is that was more motivation. I don't want to let Eric and Mark and Steve and Jareen and all the people that work at Link, I can't let them down. So that's motivation to continue.
For sure. Yeah. No, I can. I think sort of the common denominator there is really it's kind of an impossible question to answer because it always depends, sort of. Like, it really is, it's sort of a case by case thing with each language. And what I also find is really rarely the case is that the reason you start a language is really rarely the reason why you keep going in a language, because most of the time it's just pure curiosity, or you just like how it sounds or something like that. But for me, it always really depends. Like, for example, with Spanish, I'm not even really too sure. It was just I figured I had some extra art electives at university, and I'm like, okay, sure, I might as well know some Spanish instead of a bunch about art history or something like that. So I just went for that. But eventually you get into the language and you learn about the diversity of, like, the different accents in Spain, and the variation in Argentina, and you kind of really start to you gotta it's through novelty that you kind of keep the motivation going, and you kind of have to seek that out. But it really depends, because, for example, how you mentioned Spanish was more or less my case with French, and it was sort of a hard relationship. I did not want to learn French. I just really didn't want to. But just sort of expected. I mean, I live 10 minutes from Quebec. You kind of have to. But I never. That was probably, of all the languages I've learned, the one I've enjoyed the very least, because it was really just kind of forced. It was really no intrinsic motivation. But yeah, the thing is, it really depends. It really depends on the language. It's hard to.
Well, and one thing actually, and there is another thing that I will talk about that is mentioned here in the comments. But one thing I do want to talk about, or for a second, is you're a great example, and I myself am an example of. They say that you cannot force yourself to learn a language, and that is absolutely not true. Because my main reason in learning Spanish, and I've grown to enjoy Spanish. I really like Spanish. I've learned about their culture. But in terms of when I first started learning Spanish, I had no interest. I just felt like it was my American civil duty to learn it. So you absolutely can teach yourself something that you don't want to know.
It's just a lot harder. It's obviously possible. It's a lot harder. When I think I've made some quite rapid progress in Spanish, but in French, in the same amount of time, it was really nothing compared. And I believe I was spending the same amount of time daily in the language. It was simply a matter of the value I attached to the language, which I really appreciate French now. I mean, in hindsight, I really should have just smartened up, but it's hard when you're in the moment.
No, I agree, and that's where I am with Spanish. Is I really wish now that I wouldn't have been so jaded towards it, and really just I wish that those first 3 or 6 months I would have just hammered it in, because now I'm in a weird spot to where I'm not a beginner, but I'm, again, a B1 certificate says that I'm intermediate, but I don't know if I would consider myself an intermediate Spanish speaker. It just depends on the topic, which I guess is true about anything, but like now I'm in a point where anything that I try to use is either way too elementary or way too advanced. So like and that's kind of the bad part of learning that way.
Sure, and I actually think that is also to tie in what we were talking about before, sort of these programs that are similar to like Babbel and Duolingo and all this kind of stuff. I think that's sort of a big limiting factor there. Is it is not. Doesn't make it very easy to jump back into a language, because I mean, you're either going to restart back from the tree and just die of boredom, or you're going to continue and just become constantly frustrated. Whereas I think that's a huge value for a system like Link, where it's like you'll sort of naturally fill in the gaps. You just start listening to content. If it's too hard, it's too hard. If it's too easy, it's too easy. But you'll fill in the gaps, and eventually you'll make it work.
Yeah, and it's not a thing where you don't have to complete, like, it's not a tree, so you don't have to do the pets category to get to this. You pick and choose what you want. I can go to Link right now and import news articles and go from there. So so I agree with that.
That's something I really can't stand that about Duolingo. I mean, for me, honestly, I gotta say I'm a total cheater on Duolingo, because I go right to the end and I just test out, and I use any resources I can just to pass the test, because I don't want to review animals. I don't really care about grocery. Like, I just just do the present, the verb conjugations and stuff like that. Let's drill those. And it's just it has very little. I mean, I'll never remember the word for whale in like any language.
Yeah, and I know specifically Spanish, I believe French, and I think they're rolling it out for German, where they've actually realigned the courses to where it lines up with the CEFR, or the is that what it's called? The CEFR? The Central European Framework, whatever it's called. Where it's lined up for that. So I don't know. One thing I do want to get your opinion, and I complain about this all the time, but this is a comment here. said you could get heaps of views if you made a video like American Man Speaks 5 Languages, or a video called Learning an Entire Language in a Month, and even says, even though that those Learn a Language in a Month videos aren't genuine. What do you think? I'm not going to mention any specific person, because even though one specific person that I'm thinking of, even though they did this video, I still respect that person, because I do find them to make good content, as long as it's not in that shady aspect. But like, what do you think about the kind of the falsities by the larger known polyglot group?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's obviously not good, I think, for the language community. Although you can understand why they do it. I mean, you can kind of understand. It's tricky, but I mean, it's really not good for anyone trying to. I think for people who are already in the language community, I think we all can kind of look at it and just kind of roll our eyes and like, okay, it's, you know, I can't, you know, he's done well for himself in the language, and you know, it's probably, he's probably drilled these sentences so long, it's we kind of know what's going on more or less. But for outsiders trying to get into it, I think it sets up a lot of false expectations, which is definitely a problem. I think a realistic time frame, it really depends on the video. 1 month is sort of ridiculous. I think you can make really good headway in around, you know, 3 to 6, I think is okay. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely not good. I think it should be a bit more. I would really appreciate a bit more transparency on those kind of things, especially for.
No, I agree. And see, my big issue is because and it's the same reason, I think I even made a video about this topic, in terms of, you know, we'll trash Duolingo in terms of like being seasoned language learners, but we have to appreciate what they've done in terms of bringing new language. There's people who never would have ever wanted to learn a language that did it because Duolingo is just a cool little fun thing.
Totally.
And I kind of put it in the same line with like these videos. It's bringing people in, but not in a good way, because if you're coming in, especially when you talk about learning, I don't know, Spanish in a week or two or something of that nature, I don't think it's good, because first off, that's a very common language. So there's going to be a ton of people searching for how to learn Spanish. If you don't know a lot about language learning and language acquisition, you don't understand that this guy's background in other languages makes him able to learn languages faster.
Right.
If you're already fluent in French and Italian and even dabbled in Romanian and any of the other, you know, Romance languages, or even have a background in English, which is, I guess, Germanic. I don't know. Is English Germanic? I don't really know. I think it's a Germanic tree, but
Germanic, yeah.
But you're going to be able to pick that language up faster versus someone who has literally never studied a language ever. So I think that, and on some of these videos, I'll go through and look, and it's so heartbreaking to me to read comments that are like, man, this guy's learned more in a week than I've learned in 6 months. Like, that's not good.
Yeah. Like, I think a really key factor here is really trying to, sort of a priori sort of determine the target audience of the video, right? Because I think, like, you know, there is a polyglot who's coming to mind. His name is just totally escaping me, but his videos really seem to be tailored. He's in Italian and he speaks like amazing Finnish, and he's just starting on Georgian too as well. But he speaks these languages amazingly, and he does make these videos where he speaks in them and all this kind of stuff, and he speaks all his languages. But it doesn't feel like the target audience. It feels like the target audience is the polyglot community anyway. And I think there's really no problem being like, yeah, man, you rock that. Like, good for you. Like, that's, you're doing an amazing job or something like that. But say like, how to learn Spanish in like 2 weeks or something like that, and like, it's just, I think it's not comparable, and that I feel is well, it's really the same thing as like any like miracle weight loss strategy or anything like that, compared to like, you know, bodybuilders saying like, look what I was able to do in 1 season, as compared to like, you know, people being like, oh, I lost all my weight in 2 weeks. It's just like,
right. Yeah, well, and I think it ultimately goes into, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to make it on my channel, but it would also, I think, be a double standard. But I've always thought about making a video on, and it would be like 5 seconds long, and it would just be the most important video to watch before learning any language. And it would simply be me, and I would say, the easiest tip to learn a language fast: turn this video off, start studying, stop watching video, like, stop watching how. Dude, if people would spend as much, and again, it would be bad because it would kill my channel or kill whatever, but like, if you really wanted to learn a language, if you took the amount of time that you spend looking up videos on how to learn a language and apply that to actually studying, dude, you'd learn so fast.
Yeah.
But I don't know how it is around the world, but in America, man, we're wanting these quick miracle drugs. We want to learn Spanish in a month. We want to lose 100 pounds in a month. We want to, and
Yeah,
we'll spend a month researching and not actually spend a month working on it. Like, it's insane.
right. Yeah, no, I feel like because there is sort of this sort of divide between, people who have acquired the second language and they're like, for example, in Europe, the standard is sort of being bilingual, right? The standard is your native plus English,
Right.
and probably another one sometimes. But in North America in general, I mean, even though Canada is technically a bilingual country, it's a very small percentage of our population that is actually bilingual. Pretty much all of them are in Quebec anyway.
Right.
And so I think for North America, it's kind of a different story. And then when we look at people who even speak one other language, it really is something. It's really something incredibly special. We're like, wow, that's even just one. Even I could just be bilingual. That's so special. And what I'm trying to say is when a polyglot will make a video of how we'll learn Spanish in 2 weeks or French in a month or something like that, it's all that more. It has all that more power. Like, oh my god, that's incredible. And then but it kind of makes the viewer, if they're mystified already by the fact that he's bilingual, being like, okay, well, there's something wrong with me. Like, I've not been managed to do this. And then it's sort of exactly the opposite effect, or maybe that was a desired effect. But in any case, it's not beneficial to the language community. So that would happen. Yeah.
Yeah. But, I guess it's ultimately the kind of the tale of the tape with YouTube, though, in terms of when they started cutting advertisers' money, anything that you can do to get a quick click to make money, I guess, is whatever. So the thing that I find hilarious is the people that do that, though, are people that already have a large following that don't really need, like... You would think that would be, like, for my channel, right? 700 subscribers. That would be perfect for me, right? Look at me clickbait people in here. But, like, we're talking about people with 100, 200,000 subscribers. Like, wait, you don't need that. It's funny, man.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you gotta kind of. It's no mystery. Like it is kind of obvious. Like that you would. This is sort of an expected result. But I mean, you could say this apply to like any industry, even like modeling or something like that. Like any sort of pictures that are heavily edited or all this kind of stuff. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with it. But it would be nice to have a bit of transparency to say, hey, this picture was heavily edited, for example, or like, hey, my video is scripted, or I've been rehearsing these lines for like the past month or something like that.
Right.
Just to give people an idea of what's actually going on. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you in terms of the languages that you speak, do you ever go out and speak with people? Like, do you ever go out to, I don't know what your local communities and stuff are, but do you ever get to use those where you're at?
Yeah, German. Well, one of my first job when I came back to Canada was it was a German speaking job, so I was only speaking German, and then in French you use here and there because I mean I do go to Quebec sometimes, and it comes out at some point. Spanish I've surprisingly like never used in real life, but I do frequent talks on italki. Mm-hmm. And Polish, essentially not yet, but it's a work in progress. I mean, to answer your question, yeah. If a situation comes up, then I do try. It's a huge motivating factor. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. That's I wondered about that. Yeah, because your Polish will come up for sure. And one other thing that I really did want to talk about was hold on. It was something that you had messaged. Where the crap is it at? Hold on. This should show you that this is not a like a planned out scripted thing. Like, this is just because I'm trying to find this thing.
Yeah, man, all good.
In the thing, where is it at, man? You sent me the message.
Is it on Instagram?
Yeah, it was something. Basically, it was about. I've literally read every message that we've sent, and I don't see it. Basically about.
I messaged you about lesser studied languages. Is that possible?
Yeah, it was about lesser studied languages. Yes, anyway, so lesser studied languages. That's the general idea here, that what we're going with. When you're studying something that may not have something, right? A lesser studied language, a language maybe instead of having 300 million speakers, there's 10 or 5, right? Like I know Swedish, for example, there's 5 million native speakers. Like, and not that I'm not saying that for example, but when you are studying, like I'm studying Greek right now, and I know Polish isn't necessarily just overflowing with resources. how do you what do you do to kind of get through that in terms of just like what do you do, like if it's a language that's not just available on every platform, like what is your process to try to figure it out outside of just, I mean, obviously trying the apps, but like just I guess maybe just we'll just try to get into this somehow.
For sure, yeah, let's just get going. Yeah, okay. Yeah, so it really depends. I mean, I think for a lot of the languages, I mean, Polish is surprisingly, when I say lesser studied, I mean, mostly the problem I'm facing right now is trying to get going on Guarani, which is an indigenous language spoken in Paraguay. Okay. And it's to the point where there's no dictionary online, or the dictionary doesn't know half the words. Whoa. So for me, I found a guy, for example, on Hello Talk, and I offer him English conversation, and he translates, for example, the Link mini stories for me into Guarani, and then I kind of work with those, and then there is an italki tutor. There's one for this language on italki. And I know Steve Kaufman does the same thing for some of the languages that he does. For example, Farsi, he just kind of encourages his italki tutors to kind of go out and just record their day-to-day conversation. So I think if it's at a critical point where there really is no resources, I think the world is connected enough that you can actually kind of make some, and in a sort of cost-effective way. I mean, essentially, especially in a language exchange kind of way. If you just want a dialogue, just ask someone, record yourself, and you just work through it. You can figure your way around. But I think for a wide majority of languages, I think for a lot of people it would really surprise them just how much is available. Like even for Basque, a language like Basque, there's really been shortage of resources for me. Even Catalan, Polish, there's really a lot of stuff out there. And if not, you can figure it out.
Okay, interesting. Speaking of which, if you get those translated, man, you can forward them to me, and I'll forward them to Steve, because I know that like they're not going to put resources into getting stuff translated, like if it's not like a high critical language. But I've talked to him before, and he said if it's there, like you can send it to him, and he'll, even if it's just the mini stories, they'll do what they can to get it on there. Like they're not going to spend money to go out of their way and try to find it if no one, if only a couple of people are doing it. But he said if he had it, I mean, he'd put it on there.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna talk to the guy that I'm working with right now to see if he'd be cool with that, because I mean that would be for Guarani. It's like 7 to 8 million speakers. Like there's a lot of speakers of this indigenous language, and it's a fascinating thing, but really like zero resources. Like it's really slim. Yeah. So yeah, it would be really cool to get that out there for sure.
I'm interested. We're actually gonna. I kind of knew where I was going, but this is again part of what I like about doing this instead of having like a scripted format. What's the interest in that language? Like, where did you stumble across that? What's the interest and stuff like that?
Well, it mostly came with Spanish, that I was just kind of learning a lot about the different regions where Spanish was spoken, and then I don't know how I stumbled upon it, but I kind of heard about this indigenous language that was spoken bilingually in a country along with Spanish. I'm like, that for me is insane. I don't know how I've never heard of that before. That's so cool. Yeah. And then I kind of looked into the situation, and yeah, like nowadays people are most of the population speaks both Guarani and Spanish, and then they tend to speak in their day-to-day life a mix called Jopara, which is really mostly Guarani, but it does use Spanish words for things like numbers and times of the day, as far as I'm concerned, these kinds of stuff. But it was really just when I heard, because I've always been sort of even a bit curious of indigenous languages, but I mean, it would have just been taken way too much out of me to actually go ahead and do it, because it's so hard to even find people to speak with. No one on iTalk anywhere. But like on a national level, like 7 to 8 million, like that's for me, that was incredible. I'm like, yeah, I need a bite of that. Like I gotta figure that out a little bit. Like that's incredible.
That's interesting, because like. What's funny is I feel like I know what I'm thinking of. I don't think. What did you say the other one was? Jorpa?
It's called so the language is called Guarani, and then the mixture with Spanish is called Jopara.
I think the reason I'm thinking of that is because of, do you know what North Sentinel Island is? North Sentinel Island is this island off of the coast of I believe India, or I think it's in between India and Africa. And it's this island, and there's like 50 or 60. It's still a Stone Age. They're still in the Stone Age.
Yeah, probably like some sort of animated. Yeah, some sort of thing on that. Yeah. Okay.
So, okay. And I think the reason I'm confusing that is because I think they're called. Jarpas maybe Jorpa, something like that. It's very, very. That's what I was like. That's not the same thing, but it's definitely not the same thing.
Yeah, and for anyone there, for Guarani, there actually is a Duolingo course available. It doesn't have a lot of the audio. It's kind of missing some audio, and there are some mistakes, but it is it's pretty much the only, more or less the only thing that's out there. And if you switch your interface language to Spanish, you can learn Guarani in that way. Yeah.
Whoa. So is it actually a separate language or is it a dialect?
No, it has nothing to do with Spanish. It's. I
Oh.
mean, if you hear people speaking, so the thing is, pure Guarani is not really spoken in Paraguay. They speak the Jopara, so they will hear
Mhm.
some sort of Spanish words in there here and there, and Guarani speakers are necessarily Spanish speakers, so the accents may sort of sound a bit similar nowadays. Just like Basque kind of sounds like Spanish, even though it has nothing to do with it.
Sure.
But it's an indigenous language. It has nothing to do with it. No, it's really crazy.
Huh.
Yeah,
That's
so cool.
that's that's interesting. So it's not available for English speakers, but it is for Spanish speakers.
Yeah, if you switch your interface to
Okay.
Spanish, you can study there. You can. There's also Catalan available, so you can study Catalan. You can study Guarani, but you have to switch your thing to Spanish first.
Okay. That might be something I check out down the road. I'm not gonna do it right now because then I'll end up trying to learn it and I'll drop
It's,
something. But
it's really
that's interesting because I do love I love the idea of indigenous languages. I love that with the power of the internet that so many people have started trying to learn languages that are endangered
yeah.
to try and I mean, essentially help them survive.
Yeah.
And I know that Duolingo has added some courses.
Messing with Hawaiian, right? I think you're
Yeah,
messing with Hawaiian.
Polynesia or what? But yeah, Hawaiian is it Polynesian. I love languages, but I'm still not like I still don't know like the scientific terminology sometimes. But I think that it's really cool. And then there's also if you like indigenous languages, there's a girl on I don't know if you do you use Twitter.
Yeah. Not really, no.
Oh, okay, there's a girl on Twitter. I can actually link her. Let me see if I can find this real quick. Or it's a woman. It's a girl named Sandra. She's actually German, but she runs a thing called it's called Lang Jam, Language Jam.
Well, I think she's the one doing Nahuatl or the Aztec, is it?
I'm not sure what she's doing. She actually posts about it. Yeah, Language Jam. Actually, Language Jam starts tomorrow. But she did um like a few months ago. She did specifically an indigenous language jam, which is where you basically sign up and you basically they ask you some questions and then she'll send you a couple of languages. Hey, all right, study this, and it's you drop everything that you're doing and you study these languages for 2 or 3 days, and it's just for the idea of getting you introduced to a language that you maybe never would have studied before or had interest in. But she did one for indigenous languages, and I thought that that was really really cool.
For sure, for sure. No, and it's really cool, especially in South America. I mean, I think in North America, it's more or less, it's kind of, there's not much, they're not really as wide spoken, but in South America, there are quite a number. I mean, even Aztec is spoken, Yucatec Maya is spoken, and Guarani. If you're into it, there's a lot, you can really keep yourself busy with South American
Yeah,
and indigenous. It's super cool.
there is there's a woman that lives here where I live, and I know her through I like to tell backstories, man, so I apologize for that. But I worked at GameStop for from 2005 to 2012. I was a store manager there, and there was a woman that would come in. Her name was Vivian, and she was born and raised on an Indian reservation and she speaks English. She lived in Germany for a while, so she speaks German too, but she speaks whatever her tribe was, and I don't remember what it is. I always want to say Navajo, but that's because that's like the most common.
Yeah.
But it's not Navajo, but it's like
So, Ojibwe, Cree,
man,
Blackfoot.
I don't. I'm gonna have to. I'm gonna send her a message. I still talk to her regularly. I'm gonna send her a message because I would love to. I mean, just chat with her about that because that's very interesting.
Yeah.
But as far as I know, she knows how to write it and speak it, and I just think that's a really really cool thing.
Yeah, I mean that's why I mean like yeah, if at all the Aboriginal languages is something you're interested in, like Guarani is so contagious because I mean even the history of how this actually happened is incredible. Paraguay, for example, out
Hmm.
of nowhere they declared what was the War of the Triple Alliance, and they declared war I believe on Uruguay, Argentina, and Brazil for territory disputes. They obviously they lost, and pretty much the entire the entire male population was eviscerated essentially. So Paraguay was essentially rebuilt by the women, and it was the women who were sort of the Aboriginals, and they spoke Guarani, and so they continued to transmit the language into the further generation. So it wasn't actually Spanish anymore that was the dominant language, and so it's just through these sort of like unseen circumstances that these kind of languages survive into current days. And yeah, it's sort of it's a national language. It's really incredible.
That's very fascinating. I do want to learn, and I think what I need to really get into the habit of doing is there's nothing wrong with researching a language and learning its history. That doesn't mean I have to jump in and learn it immediately.
Yeah.
And that sounds like something that I would love to read about because that's what got me about North Sentinel Island is the idea that these people still don't even understand what like a phone or electricity is, and they
Aren't there some visitors there that just get instantly killed, or am I thinking about something different?
well there was a guy who was trying to I guess like go and like essentially read them the Bible, and but right as he got up on land, they just murdered him, no questions about it, man. There was like a big dispute, and like I think whatever, because like some government still I think it's India still technically controls the island, but they control it under the idea that they don't control it, but it's I guess their property, I think. And so I think maybe some of his family or something was wanting to press charges, and they were like, nope, we have this set up, like you're not supposed to be here, you're not supposed to go near the island, we've told you that, like, but they did. And then there's all kinds of interesting stuff about it, man. They're back in, I guess, like I'm thinking maybe 70s or 80s, or it might have been late 80s, early 90s, but it's been a long time. There was a scientist who, once they discovered the island, he actually he's the only person that they've ever been okay with being like around them. Like he would take them like coconuts and stuff as like peace offerings, and like there's even video of him, you can find it on YouTube, there's a video of him, he's in the water, and like they are, I mean, like friendly, like they're kind of getting close to him, but they're also keeping their distance. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they took him into their land. Like I think they let him come in for a little bit, and then he left, and he apparently had made a mistake sometime, and that kind of turned their back on him because I don't think he ever really went back. But yeah, there's like a 2-mile radius that you're not allowed to go. You're not allowed to go within a 2-mile radius of this island just because it's like they will straight kill you, man. Because I mean, you're encroaching on their on their territory. I watched the whole documentary about it, man.
Really?
I love stuff like that, and it's also sad to me that. I don't know. Is it sad though? That's their life. That's what they're used to. Who am I to say? I bet that ultimately they're probably a lot happier because they don't know.
They probably have no idea what's going on right now, eh? Like,
yeah. So, and actually, one of the main reasons they don't want you visiting is because you don't know you don't know what diseases exist on that island.
Yeah. And
you also don't know what diseases you could take to the island and completely wipe them out. Because as far as I know, I think the last time, I don't know how they would even get this number, but I think the last time they said it, like, I mean, I think there's only like 50 or 60 people. Like, could you imagine your life is on this maybe couple of square mile island, and it's 50 to 60 people, and that's your entire life?
I could not imagine. No, that would definitely be something that would be hard to imagine that. But I gotta interrupt you there, man, because I'm gonna have to wrap it up on my end. But like, thanks a lot for having me on, man. I had a lot of fun chatting.
Yeah, dude. Hopefully we can do it again. Send me a message on Skype or something, and wherever, or Instagram or Facebook or whatever.
I had a great chat, man. I really appreciate it. It was a lot of fun.
Send me some more information about some of that other stuff, because that definitely interests me too. Yeah, let me end this real quick. Anybody watching, thank you all. I just say like 4 to 5 viewers throughout, and got a couple of questions, which is super cool. If anybody watching would ever want to be on this, you can also do that too. I don't care about anything outside of just if you love languages, I'll talk to anybody. But we'll end this episode here. Yeah, James, is there anything that you want to plug, or like, do you have a site? Do you do YouTube or anything like that?
A little bit. I'm getting started, but it's nothing yet. I don't even know what my channel name is yet.
Okay. Well, once you get that set up, you can come back on and we'll get you set up there. So, But yeah, dude, I appreciate you for coming on, and I am going to end this stream. So thanks everybody for watching.
Thanks a lot, man. Catch you next time.